Hi, I heard you wanted to try tanking. Whenever the topic of tanking comes up in a Final Fantasy XIV discussion, my friends who are new to the game, except for one person in specific we will not name, always talk about how anxious it makes them to the point where it has its own name. Tankxiety. As a person with a decent amount of hours on Final Fantasy, and a person who finds a way to tank in any given game. Yes, even Elden Ring. People didn't even believe me before Yunfa made this video. I would like to say I probably know enough to teach you the very basics and start you on your journey. But before we do that, do you enjoy me yapping into your ear about video games? Do you want me to continue doing that? Then consider subscribing and doing the usual comment and like combo to help push my video to more people. I will thank you by yapping more instead of taking your order if you can get enough people watching. To begin with, you have 4 options when it comes to tanks in Final Fantasy. As of release of this video, you can start the game as a humble marauder starting in Limsa, who will turn into a warrior, also known by pronoun too angry to die. You could start as a gladiator in Ulta, which will eventually start eating glue. And once you reach Heaven's Ward or Shadowbringers, you will have access to Dark Knight, my boy. We will talk more about that tank in specific in later videos. Or Gunbreaker, the job that no one plays in Square Enix offices, hence why it keeps getting buffed despite being the highest damage dealing tank.
Let's eat!
Regardless of your choice, all options are similar in nature. You have ways to lower damage you and your allies take, you have ways to keep aggro of enemies so they don't hit your allies, and while you don't deal as much damage as a DPS, you still deal an amount very close to them. Now that the introductions are out of the way, let's make a list of things you should do as a tank, then explain them in detail. A tank job in general is generating and keeping aggro of enemies, lowering the amount of damage they and their allies take with proper mitigations, doing the rotation to output considerable amounts of damage. Let's start with the first one. Enemies in Final Fantasy, aside from very selective cases, will attack whoever generated highest amount of aggro. Aggro comes from 3 different things. When you hit something, you generate 1 point of aggro for 1 point of damage. When you heal yourself or an ally, you generate 0.5 aggro for 1 point of healing. And specifically for tanks, your range attack, AoE attacks, and gap closer and provoke generate a set point of extra aggro. Keeping aggro is extremely simple. Every tank has what we call a tank stance, each with their own name. Warrior has Defiance, Gladiator has Iron Will, Dark Knight has Grit, and Gunbreaker has Royal Guard. All of these do the same thing. You can turn them on or off at will, and when they're on, any aggro you generate is multiplied by 10. If you have your stance on, as long as you're hitting your enemies aside from another tank, you will always have aggro. When you are in a dungeon, you will usually be with 1 healer and 2 DPS. While keeping aggro once established in a scenario is extremely easy, getting the initial aggro may be more difficult as you're expected to run from one start of the dungeon to the entrance of the next boss while grabbing any enemies on the way, which is called wall-to-wall tanking, and should be something you should get accustomed to if you want to walk the path of tanking. It will save everyone a ton of time. Must then just have 2 small groups, in which case getting closest to the first group, pressing your sprint button before engaging the enemy, because that grants you 20 seconds of running, while pressing it in battle gives you 10 seconds. I know it's confusing, but continue follow me here. Followed by either using your AoE attack to try and hit every enemy, or using a range attack on your first target, provoke your second target, and use another range attack on your third target to get your aggro quickly. While it sounds very complex, this can be done by just pressing tab to switch targets and pressing the next action, then running to the next group and using your AoE attacks, because you will not have provoke at this point. You can add your gap closers once you have them to speed up the process even further. When it comes to bosses, your job is even easier than before. Just use a range attack on start or gap close into the boss and start hitting it. If you are having trouble keeping your aggro, check if your stance is on. Otherwise, skip to the damage section of the video. In the event that you are in a fight with multiple tanks, those being either alliance raids, trials, or raids, you can simply ask if they want a main tank or off tank. In this scenario, a main tank keeps their stance on and takes hits while off tank just hits the boss. Any endgame content and very rarely some fights may require what we call a tank swap, where main tank is inflicted with a debuff that won't allow them to take hits, and off tank may have to swap with them. But that's much later down the line, so you don't need to worry about that as a beginner tank. And that's all you need to know about holding aggro. Very simple concepts. Now let's get to something harder, mitigating. As a tank, not only do you have much more health than others, your gear provides you with more damage mitigation by default, and as if that wasn't enough, your level 1 passive, a lot of people forget about, gives you a 20% mitigation by default. If you're wondering why that melee DPS with just a bit less health than you is dying in a couple hits, that is why. Even with all of this, you can't just pull everything wall to wall and expect to survive. That's where your mitigations abilities come in. These come at varying cooldowns while doing various ways to help you sustain more damage. This could be increasing your max health, lowering damage you take, lowering damage they do, giving you shields, which is just more health that doesn't stick around once it's gone, increasing your parry or block chance, which is a random thing that reduces damage by 15 and 20% respectively, or plain old healing. While your regular attacks might have healing or shields built into it, you shouldn't be thinking about using these for survival. They are there to deal damage, so we won't be covering those here. Let's simplify and dumb down things a bit. All tanks are similar with their mitigations. Every tank has Rampart, which reduces damage you take by 20% and increases healing you get once it's upgraded, although this doesn't change when you use it. This has a 90-second cooldown. Big Mitigation that gives you 30% or 40% once it's upgraded, alongside another flavor buff like shields or regen or healing. This one has a 2-minute cooldown. A short cooldown that does various things depending on your job at 25 seconds, except for Dark Knight, who has 15 seconds on it. A flavor cooldown that varies between 60 to 90 seconds on cooldown with various effects. Dark Knight has 2 of these, keep that in mind. Reprisal, which reduces enemy damage, and one flavor mitigation that applies to your allies as well. Glue Eater specifically has 2 of these. An invulnerability that either makes you immune to damage or unable to be reduced below 1 health on a very long cooldown. Arm's Length, which while doesn't provide mitigation, it slows attack speed of enemies that hit you by 20%. Not that this only works against normal enemies and not bosses. Not that at any point I say flavor, while it might give you more max health or make you take less damage, they are used in the same scenarios. So don't worry if something heals you for 50% of your health or gives you 40% mitigation, you'll be pressing it at the same time. When wall-to-wall tanking, you should be using your short mitigation on cooldown alongside one another cooldown of your choice and try to keep one active at all times. Rampart is a common opening choice as it lasts longest at 20 seconds, which will give you plenty of time to grab everything, followed by your flavor cooldown, as enemies will be usually dead or close to dead by the time your second cooldown expires, and you would like to use your big mitigation for the second double group. While this is a general idea on how you should mitigate, it's by no means must do in order deal. If your healer is struggling, you can add more mitigations or even press your invulnerability. No matter what happens, it will give you 10 more seconds, so do not be afraid to press it if things are not going your way. When it comes to bosses, they will regularly use what we call tank busters, which do high amounts of damage that go between hurting you just a little bit if it's the earlier game content, to outright killing you if it's in Dawn Trail. Either way, they should be mitigated with your big cooldown and a short cooldown, or if you messed up and don't have anything remaining, your invulnerability. Your reprisal and flavor team mitigations should be used when the boss is using an AoE attack, which hit your entire party, even if you have aggro. The rest of your mitigations can be used when the boss is just hitting you normally. While this is barely required in a non-endgame content, you will make your healer's job just a bit easier. But just not mitigating basic attacks is just as fine. That's all you need to worry about when it comes to mitigating. While it may sound like I'm skimming through something extremely detailed and important, it really is not that big of a deal. As long as you're pressing a big mitigation for tank busters and pressing rest of your mitigations regularly when wall-to-wall pulling, you are world's okayest tank, and rest will come with time. And lastly, the most important part, damage. Unlike most games, damage is king in Final Fantasy. You have limited resources for defending yourself, and healers have limited resources for healing you. So sooner things die, sooner you can recover those for the next thing that you're fighting. While at the start of the game, your rotation will be simple thing as pressing 2 or 3 buttons in a row with a 4th button that requires a gauge or cooldown, things will get complex pretty quickly. So let's cover them in a simplified fashion. For this part, we will be dividing tanks into 2 groups. Dark Knight and Warrior in one, Gunbreaker and Small Sword Guy in another. Dark Knight and Warrior both gain a 10% damage increase as long as Dark Knight uses a damaging mana cost ability and the Warrior is using their 3rd attack with the red color. This makes things significantly easier to deal considerable amounts of damage at a beginner level. Simply use all of your abilities whenever they are available after getting your damage boost, and you will generally be fine. Here are all abilities that deal damage that you should be pressing for Dark Knight. And now Warrior. Pause the video if you need a second. Coming up to Gunbreaker and my favorite punching bag, they both have an ability that increases their damage for a short duration on a 60-second cooldown, named No Mercy and Fight or Flight respectively. To do decently, don't use abilities aside from your regular melee combo unless they are on a 30-second cooldown or if it gives you too much gauge in the case of Gunbreaker. Afterwards, just press your damage button and make sure you throw everything you have out at the boss before the cooldown expires, and you will do more than fine. Just with the previous group, here are all the damaging abilities for Gunbreaker, and now leftovers you won't touch. As closing words, I'd like to say that most guides out there focus on perfection from get-go, which overloads most of the new players. It is similar to trying to teach a kindergartner how to do a surgery. There is a time and place for every single knowledge that someone new should learn, and this turns them away from learning, and for now, practice these and check the description once you are ready for something more advanced. Hopefully by then I will have a guide out on further explanations. Thank you for watching. Once again, please do subscribe, comment all your questions and such, and I will see you next time.